Shalom and welcome to a new lesson in the book of Joshua. The people of Israel are coming home. Today we will study chapter 17, Perek Yud Zayin. We are continuing what we spoke about in our last lesson, the tribes of Joseph. I want to point out a few interesting points to give us a wider perspective of the whole story here. We recall that in chapter 13 and also in chapter 12, we described the inheritance of 2.5 tribes. Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh. They received their part by Moses. Then we spoke about Judah, Ephraim, and today we're speaking about the other half of Manasseh. Actually, to this point, Moses distributes 2.5 tribes. Joshua also distributes 2.5 tribes. Judah, Ephraim, and half of Manasseh. And this is very, very interesting. Because if you recall in our last lesson, we said that the distributing of the land is a continuation, a continuity of what described in the book, mainly what described by Jacob. But throughout the entire second half of the book of Genesis, we see that the whole story goes between two major tribes, Judah and Joseph. And here, after we enter the land of Canaanite, Joshua distributes land also to these two major tribes, Judah and Joseph. Judah and Joseph's descendants, Ephraim and half of Manasseh. And it's interesting to understand who are the tribes that Moses distributed land to, and who are the tribes that Joshua distributes land to. Moses distributes land to Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh. Who are Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh? When the beginning of the story described in the book of Numbers appears, it says that these tribes are tribes that are shepherds. And they approached Moses. And this whole story appears in the book of Numbers, chapter 32. But we have to recall that Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh have something in common. Reuven, he is the first tribe. He is the firstborn. He should have received the largest part of the land. He should have received the leadership of the people. But if we recall, towards the end of the book of Genesis, when Jacob calls upon his sons, he says to Reuven, I'm talking about chapter 49, verse 3. Jacob calls upon all of his children. Vayikra Yaakov el banav. Let me come here, I'll tell you what's going to happen to you in the end of days. And then in verse 3, Reuven, you are my firstborn, my power, my first strength, at kochi v'reshitoni. But, pachaz kamayim al totar. You rushed like water, so you will not be superior. Reuven actually almost loses totally a part of the land. When does he get it back? Towards the end of the book of Deuteronomy. When Moses calls upon the sons and he blesses them, he says to Reuven in chapter 33 of the book of Deuteronomy, in verse 6, Yechi Reuven ve'al yamot. Reuven, may Reuven live and not die. So Jacob says to Reuven, you're not going to get a part of the land. Moses tells Reuven, you're going to get a part. How do we solve this? Reuven gets a part in the eastern side of the Jordan River, not in the main part of the land. God, who is God? God is the second tribe who is also a firstborn. He is a firstborn to the servant, the landlady, that Jacob takes upon himself together with Leah, his first wife, Zilpah. God thinks, if Reuven is not going to get, I deserve it. I'm the firstborn after Reuven in the family of Leah, in the family of the first wife. And he doesn't get a part. Reuven doesn't get, Shimon doesn't get, Levi doesn't get, only Judah gets it. But the one who were expecting it was Reuven, he was expecting it. And God, who was also first son in the in the family of Leah. And then there's another tribe. Half of Menashe. We recall in the family of Joseph, Jacob prefers Ephraim over Menashe, even though Menashe is the firstborn. So Menashe should have been one who was disappointed. But Menashe was the one who said, I don't care if my brother gets the firstborn. So Menashe gets an award. What is the award of Menashe? He gets 2 parts in the land. 1 part on the eastern side of the river, of the Jordan River, 1 part on the western side. Why? He actually belongs to Reuven and God of the disappointed children. But he was not disappointed, so he gets a half of the land. He's going to leave them connected. The fact that on the eastern side of the river we have Menashe together with Reuven and God, and on the western side we have Menashe together with Ephraim, Menashe will make sure that Reuven and God throughout history will be connected, because Menashe is connected to his other half. And therefore, in chapter 17, we have the story of Menashe getting his land. And in Menashe, we have a few stories. We have his son, Machir Bechor Menashe, who haya ish milchama. He gets the Gilad and Bashan. He is the firstborn, and he is also a mighty warrior. Then we have another story in Menashe. Tzlofchad ben Chefer, of Menashe's son, descendants, one of the families, Tzlofchad, he dies with only daughters. And the story approaches Moses already in the book of Numbers, when the daughters of Tzlofchad come to Moses and they say, listen, our father died, he doesn't have a son. And a person in the Tanakh who dies without a son and without a part of the land is almost erased from the globe. Moses says to them, you got a good question. He approaches God with the question, and God says, they are right. It is impossible that Tzlofchad will be totally wiped away. And therefore, his 5 daughters get his inheritance. They preserve his name. What does it mean, preserve his name? They express his eternity, his continuity. So we have the story of Machir, of Menashe. We have the story of the daughters of Tzlofchad, of which appear here. And then we have the end of the chapter, the descendants of Joseph come to Joshua and say, listen, we have a big tribe. Give us more. So Joshua says, what's wrong with you? You got a big land? Yeah, we have a big land, but we have forests. He says, what's the problem? Yes, your portion includes forests. Verse 18, and you prepare the land. You can cut down the trees and prepare the land for settling. And Joshua says to the people, to Menashe and Ephraim, just like he said to Judah. In the story of Judah, we had Caleb, who was the one who was initiative to go ahead. And Joshua says to them, Joseph, just like you have Machir, just like you have the daughters of Tzlofchad, who did not wait, but they took the initiative. You too, the rest of the tribe, if you want to be able to inherit this part of the land, take the initiative. Don't come here and complain. Don't say it's too difficult. It's difficult. Difficulties are there to be challenges. Difficulties are there that you should overcome them. And that's your mission, what God wants from you. Go ahead, take over the land. It's not simple. It's a challenge. But challenges are there to overcome them. So if I want to summarize what we saw till here, in chapter 16 and 17, the division of the tribe of Joseph, just like in the story of Judah, we have a big part of the land from the border of Judah, the land of Ephraim and the land of Menashe. Both these tribes are the main tribes of the state land of the people of Israel. Judah and Joseph. Judah south, Joseph to the north, And in our next lesson, we'll see who gets the part between them. But we are continuing the footsteps of Jacob. Joseph gets 2 tribes. Menashe keeps the connecting, disappointed tribes with the rest of the people. And Menashe was the one who did not care about the fact that his younger brother gets a privilege over him. And this is what keeps the nation of Israel united as one. Menashe and Ephraim live amongst each other. Some of the people of Menashe and Ephraim, some of the people of Ephraim and Menashe, and they live as 2 brothers should live. And they are also taking the initiative. And Joshua does not let them get away with any complaining. Shalom.